Thank you for joining us on the latest episode of No Tippy Tappy Football, brought to you by William Hill. How are you, Sam? How's your week
I'm
been?
very good, Natalie. Yourself?
Yes, good,
Excellent.
good.
Yeah.
It seems like we see each other every week, but so much happens in football in that time. There's always loads to talk about.
I'm had to say about that when I was coming back in. I mean, I've never known as much football on the telly as we're seeing now. And of course, Champions League starting up again now. And then we got the Carabao Cup final coming up, and all the league. I mean, what we got tonight? And you'll be there sitting watching with interest, won't you?
I will. We are recording this on the Wednesday morning before City play Arsenal in the Premier League. Yeah. So, yes.
It's going to be very interesting. I shall sit down with a can of Boddingtons and look forward to the game.
A can of Boddingtons?
A can of Boddingtons,
Will you pour it out, or will you have it from the can?
Absolutely. No, you've got to pour it out because it's got a widget in the bottom. Because call me old-fashioned, you see, because nobody talks about this anymore. Everybody used to talk in my time in the early days as a player, but it was about the head on your beer.
Okay.
It was very, very important up in the northwest that the head on the beer was nice and creamy and frothy and stayed all the way down. Sounds silly now.
Yes.
So, and obviously somebody invented the widget, so you could buy a can, which actually is just like how they pour it in the pubs now. Like I mean, so yep.
Oh, well, I have an image of you in my head now later doing that,
just
Sam.
Just me on my own. My wife will be watching something on a telly somewhere else, and I'll be, I don't know, shouting at the telly as usual, probably.
I'm hoping I will be in a positive way, though.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about today's episode. We have, so far on the pod, we've been joined mainly by former players, managers. Of course, we had Tony Bellew one week.
Yes.
So this is something really different for us today. Would you like to introduce our guest?
Yes, I've known this man for many years, on and off the field, of course, and most recently, before I got booted out by ITV as Soccer Aid, he refereed the Soccer Aid matches, of course, like I mean. So Mark Clattenburg, welcome, great to see you.
It's nice that he called us a man. Normally
you
he never calls us that.
Really?
I can't repeat what he used to say to us.
Thank you so much for coming to join us. We really appreciate your time and really appreciate your kind of honesty. You've said we can ask you anything.
Yeah,
so
why not?
So we like that.
We do like that, yes.
Yeah, you've got to be honest.
What are you up to lately? First of all, we always like to ask our guests, what's going on? What are you up to?
I'm enjoying life in Spain at the moment, just relaxing a bit like Sam does, a bit of retirement. And I was in Egypt from August, but it just didn't work out. Really difficult place to live, difficult place to settle for me. Still got a contract with the league in Greece, so I'm advising them for professional refereeing. So more of a coaching role now than a refereeing. I'm too old now, and probably Sam and his colleagues are happy that I did retire.
He doesn't look that old, does he?
No, he doesn't.
No, he does look quite well, doesn't he?
It must be the sunshine in Spain,
He's dishing out compliments to referee, can you believe it? You know what I mean?
Are you trying to get him on side, Sam?
Listen, it's whatever anybody thinks, like you mean, and whatever we talked about referees when they performed and on the day with the emotions of it. Actually, off the field, we've always got on quite well and been communicating, enjoying each other's company whenever we come across each other. So I think that contrary to what everybody thinks, of course, the perception. It's only a perception and what people think. It's not actually the truth, like you mean. So
yeah, I think when the 90 minutes are and the heat of the battle, everybody's got mixed emotions. I remember Bolton many times. You never used to see Sam in the first half. You used to have Phil Brown in your ear.
That's right.
And then you were hoping that Bolton were in the lead because then Sam was come down calm. But if they were getting beat, mamma mia, Sam would come and give you dogs abuse. Now, I used to hate being fourth official because you were just in the middle of it. But after the 90 minutes, complete different atmosphere. And I think you could have a conversation then. And I know you can't be too close. You can't go into the boardroom and have a drink after the match. Of course not, because you've got to keep your distance and professionalism. But engaging with coaches and players actually help refereeing because you could start to understand the game more, and especially from your side of it where you've got the mixed emotions and we're not always right as referees,
You're admitting that?
No, we're not. We're never always right, that's for sure. We're still... Referees understand the laws of the game, but they don't understand the game.
Yeah,
and this is a big thing.
Yeah.
We can think, we're going to give a foul here, we're going to give a yellow card here. But the game doesn't want that. The game wants something else. So we've got to adapt to what football really, really wants. And that's what fans don't understand, are they? Because they want consistency. They want the laws of the game literally applied. But you as a coach and players and everybody in the game don't want that. You just want an entertainment. It was of course you want to win, but you want it fair, and you want, you didn't, for example, didn't want to play sent off in the last minute for nothing because it would have an impact on the next matches. So we as referees have to understand that.
I think that there was a big call for me on the fact that, and professional referees were probably more than welcome at the time, but I think that you and Howard were probably in my opinion, the two standout referees that had come up and burst onto the scene and looked able to cope with the pressures of the Premier League and obviously then into professional referees. Whereas the sort of older school, which had refereed for many years. And I think that probably the same with footballers themselves. We've lost the character. It seems like the character's been knocked out of players by the fear of playing or the fear of what's happening. It seems like the character of a referee's been knocked out of it. And I don't know whether that was Mike Riley's fault or whoever's fault. He was the manager, and it was all about. It's all about, look, the rules say this and the laws say that, but there never seemed to be a referee to express himself. His personality seemed to be knocked out of him, and the last two referees for me who had that personality were Howard and Mark, and I don't know where it went with professionalism and all coming together. That just seemed to disappear, and referees go out now and you look at them. I got a lot of training in body language, which was a huge help for me in my days as a manager, but by reading it, by being told and taught that it's 80, 75 and 80% of communication. So I'd be watching in the morning and certainly watching on match day and going, look at him, we're going to have to keep an eye on him. He doesn't look, his body language doesn't look right. Is there a problem or whatever it is? And you look at the referee's body language sometimes. And of course, many times you can look in their eyes and go, he's not there now. And then you just have to leave him alone and hope he gets back and gets focused on what his job is. And it's easy to lose the plot when you're as a manager on the touchline, or when you're a player on the field, or you're a referee in the middle.
Do you think it helps, Sam, that people like, for example, Mark Halsey, who lived, he was from London, moved to Bolton, used to go into your club, train.
Oh, no doubt.
And I felt that was probably a step in the right direction, because that allowed bridges to be built, of course, and it allowed referees, because one thing that I liked about Mark Halsey was he understood the game.
Yes.
And he only understood the game because of what he used to do on a day-to-day basis with ball. Yeah. And I thought that was one of the steps forward that should have been taken. Mike didn't do it. I think Howard will probably try and break that down, because Howard's more of a modern-day manager, where Mike was more of an old school style management. I was under Mike a lot, so I understood Mike's type of management. It wasn't for me that style of management, because I was one of these referees who, for example, I got a one-match suspension for, going to watch Ed Sheeran, for example, but other referees used to do other things, so they never used to treat you on a fair basis.
You got a ban for going to watch Ed Sheeran?
Yeah.
Why?
So it was I was refereeing West Brom, and it was actually Neil Warnock causes half the problems. And when I see him there, he causes half the problems.
That's unusual. Neil causing problems, isn't it?
Yeah. Colin.
He's gone back in at 74, by the way, at Huddersfield.
It's like,
74.
What does he want? So I was refereeing West Brom Palace, and there was a controversial decision, another one of mine. And he wanted to speak to us, but I think he was getting bombarded with the press, and I wanted to leave. So I left 30 minutes after, I think, and he didn't want to come in. So I got in, and I had my car outside the stadium, because I knew if I got the car back to the hotel back up to Newcastle, I'd miss the Ed Sheeran concert. So I got into my car, got shoot up, just made the concert. Next day I rang Kieran Barrett, who was Mike Riley's assistant boss, saying, by the way, Neil Warnock rang us in the car on an unknown number. I quickly answered, said blah, 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 put the phone down. Next thing I know, I got a one-match suspension for going to Ed Sheeran concert. For speaking to Neil Warnock and going to Ed Sheeran concert. So
why though? I don't.
But my garden looked fantastic that week.
But you see, that's the wrong type of management. I mean, look, management is for me, individuals decide how they want to manage it, and it can't be. There is no book to say you've got to do it like this. Or how many people try and have tried. you do this, you do that, you do. I was always told by older managers, yes, you can follow other managers, you can take a lot of them, but you got to do it your way, and your way will prove on whether it's going to be any good or not over a period of time. Of course, I mean you're always reliant on how good your players are.
But that's your man management.
You know what I mean?
That was
That's
your
right.
style. Your man management was better than other managers. How you used to deal with people. For us, the way you used to speak to me
That's
was
what I'm
different than
saying.
other. But like, for example, you had Mike Riley compared to me. Mike Riley and Pierluigi Collina. I remember doing a game in Malmo. They ended up with the same colour as me, the team Atletico Madrid, before the match in a Champions League game.
Yeah.
So the email I got off Collina after the match, he made us cry. And I'm thinking, my career's over here. The email was so damning. 2 weeks later, he gives us a big match. I wanted to die for him. He didn't speak to us during that 2 weeks, but an appointment came through for a Champions League game, and I ran 150%. I wanted to die for him on the pitch. And that performance, because he got a reaction out of us.
Correct,
You know, if he didn't give us a game for 5-6 weeks, I would have had the hump on. But he actually gave us a game, and I wanted to die for him. So that style of man management worked, but it doesn't work for everybody.
And get it right, like you mean. And I always thought that's very, very important. No matter how busy you are, and if I was listening, if somebody's ringing, some manager's ringing him and they want to go and see him, go and see him. Yeah. If you don't, you're not going to make the right sort of communication you're going to need. Because at times I rang Mike Riley to try and get him to come and talk and discuss what was happening. Because I wanted to put up clips of where it is and saying, well, why is that happening in there and why is that not in doing here? Like, you mean, we did a huge amount. It's why Keith came up with Prozone, because there's not that many had it. At one stage, we were getting booked on an average of every 4 fouls, where the Premier League average was 10.
That's interesting.
So he couldn't cope with that.
Yeah.
Because I'm saying right. Now he could make a small argument about that we were struggling at the bottom of the Premier League a little bit at the time, that we would commit more fouls than the opposition, but that wouldn't wear for much longer than that, like you mean. So once we started keeping all our stats, we didn't just keep the stats on the players. I got the lads to keep the stats on what was happening with the referees.
This happened. I think this doesn't just happen. That just didn't happen with you, Sam. That happened with all clubs. I remember one of my colleagues went into Manchester City, for example, to do a talk to the players and coaches, which he used to get, and there was a dossier on the wall of the referee that they were having for the weekend. Yeah. So
what would be in a dossier?
Probably where he positions himself at corners. That was an example. That was huge. Just something you think it's so small, but it was so huge to a club where I used to stand at a corner, because if they're going to try and block off, a tactic to try and block the defender to create the space for the what used to have Kevin Davies coming in.
That's it.
And if you weren't aware of these tactics, I used to say to the players before they do it, if you're going to do it, and the players used to say, how do you know this? But you had to know it beforehand, and that's only because speaking to players and coaches used to give you that insight. But they used to analyse you a lot, where you positioned yourself, how many cautions I would do. Because if he was going to be physical today, I bet, he would know, Mark Clattenburg's quite lenient, which he did, probably.
We knew how many times you booked, how many you sent off, what games you had and all that, like you mean. So I always remember going, because at half time I'd get some stats in my ears from the lads like who were coding, and who was the Middlesbrough referee?
Jeff Winter.
Jeff Winter was refereeing at Man United, Bolton. So, and I'd lost the plot because he'd had a nightmare as far as I was concerned. And I'd gone in at half time saying, and you're not supposed to do this, like, I mean, what's going on? What do you mean? I said, something like, can't think exactly, 14 fouls for Man United, 2 for us. What's happening? What are you doing? Have you lost the plot? Is the crowd too big for you? And I'm thinking I'm going to get
in trouble.
Going to get an FA charge here and all that, like, and he came out, and obviously he wasn't quite as bad the second half, but you just can't. Now, it's unconscious bias. I'm not saying he's done this on purpose. It's unconscious bias of him not being able to cope. I mean, I got fined 20 grand for saying this. Unconscious bias. The referee favoured the opposition, didn't mean to, but it's unconscious bias. Because they are human beings. It's why VAR is still a good tool, but it's not a good tool. It's the people who make the decisions with that tool is why it's not quite working properly. So we've got to get them better at making those decisions. We get better people to do it. And I think that when you're in a position in the cauldron, then you're going to be swayed by crowd, by whatever might be happening, by players, by managers in the tunnel, by whoever. And you're not doing it on purpose. You're not. It's not you're going out to do it. It's unconscious bias. It happens, and that's why the game evolves like it does evolve. There's always going to be some mistakes, but we want to try and eradicate the big ones as much as we possibly can.
Well, do you think there's unconscious bias in referees?
Only if it was Newcastle. And Sunderland. But no, I understand what Sam's saying, and it's only when I got a bit more experience I started to understand that. When I refereed, I just refereed. And probably when I refereed when I was a young referee, that's where I probably got me most criticism. I used to just blow my whistle and never think. Yeah? And when you got a bit of experience, you started to develop and you started to understand. And I remember it was Gus Hiddink learned me. Gus Hiddink learned me something when he was a coach in, I think it was the Russian national team. And it was a friendly match against Holland. And they were 2-0 Holland. And I give a penalty in injury time. And then I played another 2 or 3 minutes injury time, finished 4-0. And Gus came to me and he said, Mark, you're a great talent, you're a great referee, but I'm going to learn you something. I said, what? He said, in a friendly, it's 2-0. I can explain this to the media in Russia. But 4-0, I'm under pressure. Correct. And what he's saying is, why play the injury time? It was only a friendly. And when you think about it logically, why to fight with a coach when he was so happy with my performance, but his mentality, his thinking was, I've lost 4-0.
Yeah.
I want to blame somebody.
But if there's injury time, there's injury time.
But friendly, it's management. Friendlies, we're talking
Some
about. Some
managers have lost a job in pre-season friendlies.
Yeah, you've got to be careful. It's all
when they lost too many goals. It's like scary. It's not very often, of course, but I know it has happened in my time. But we're always going to have it talked about and debated. It's just about are they better than they used to be, in my opinion. And obviously this conversation is because that's here. And I have to say, are the referees better than they used to be? I don't think they are. I'm sadly, players, much more pressure, managers, much more pressure, referees, much more pressure, much more scrutiny all across the board. But are they able to cope with it? Are they able to deliver? I don't think they're quite as consistent as they used to be. And of course, who do I blame? Not them. Too many rule changes, too many things to think about. I don't know what Howard's management style is going to be like, but it has to be, he has to pull them together and it has to get them, in my opinion, it has to get them relaxed, has to get them integrated amongst each other to learn from each other and with each other and all be together. There's always been some cases where that's not been the case. There's always been, I'm told, well, probably Elsie told me favouritism, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Of course. And that shouldn't be it's very difficult. But if you're the manager, that shouldn't be the case. You know what I mean?
That's an interesting debate what you say, because it's a bit like players from the past to players now. I'm not a big lover of comparing because the game's changed so much, Sam, and I honestly believe that. I think the referees honestly are fitter now.
I agree with that, yeah.
Because maybe the group's got younger. I think what's happened over the years isn't the referees have got worse. Two things happened for me. One, the group got older. And you've lost a lot of... If you think Webb, Clattenburg, myself, Dowd, just three in that little quick era with Halsey, would have lost 80 matches in the Premier League, at least 80 matches, because we all would have refereed 20 matches.
Yeah.
Then you've lost, over the years, Atkinson, Moss, Andre Mariner's getting older, Dean, Mason. Yeah. All of these referees, Mike Jones, even though Mike Jones and them weren't getting the top games, they could do 10, 15 matches. Yeah. So what you've lost is you've lost a lot of experience. And what you're doing is you're replacing them with a lot of inexperienced referees. But the second part of this is VAR's caused a big problem. And it happened to me when I went to China. I started not refereeing. I actually relied on the VAR, and I was sad. I felt for the first month in I was going to quit. Think, what am I doing? I've lost me core ability to make a decision. As a referee, you made split-second decisions,
correct, yeah.
and I was so comfortable at doing it.
Yeah.
I made how many in the Premier League? And we didn't need VAR. Okay, I could have needed VAR sometimes, but not to the amount that they're using now. But I was frightened to make a decision. And now you've got when I see these referees now, week in, week out, there's a fear and they're scared to make a decision. And the problem with when you're scared to make a decision, you don't make one.
Yeah.
And then the VAR doesn't make one either. So if we look like, for example, the West Ham decision against Chelsea.
The penalty wasn't a penalty that should have been a penalty.
If this is not a penalty.
It was a save, wasn't it? Yeah.
Brilliant bit of goalkeeping from a defender, a midfielder stroke defender. Yeah. But because the referee doesn't give it, the VAR then goes, wait, my high level of intervention, whatever this is, I don't understand that. I don't want to give it because he's breaking his fall. So what he's then doing is you're compounding a mistake where if the referee just give the penalty because he should have seen it and had the courage to blow, the VAR would have supported it. So we've still got all of these problems. The referees are not making the original decisions, which we did in our time.
Correct.
That's the difference.
Do you think VAR's helping referees in any way?
Yeah, it's saving I'm not saying it's not going to save Lee Mason's career probably because, but Lee was the VAR, and is a VAR you shouldn't get the decision wrong because you've got all the technology. As a referee, you accept that a player might run across me vision.
Well, Lee's only been bumped down to doing VAR now and not refereeing, has he?
Yeah, because maybe they thought he was better as a VAR as a referee.
I'll tell you what game decided that. That was West Brom versus Brighton.
Yeah.
And I was the manager because he really did have a really tough time that day. And I'll tell you, look in the eyes, and the eyes are gone. And Lee lives in Bolton, like me. I've known his dad for years when I was a player at Bolton, like you mean. So I've known him growing up with his younger brother was apprentice with my son, you know what I mean, trying to be a manager. So I've known him for a long time, like you mean. So, but I always think the referees had this a long time. We used to monitor how much referees' workload was. So he'd come back from, Mark had come back from UEFA League Thursday, and then he'd be refereeing us on Sunday. And then you talk to him, and I'd talk to him, and then they'd drive down.
I was tired.
And then there'd be fourth official, and then they'd be back out and I'm going, and I'd say just while I talk to him, what are you doing? I drive down, or I don't think you ever flew down anywhere.
What, to Bolton? Have you got that, Bolton?
No, London. Did you fly to London?
Yeah.
And I think, so we used to go with the load, because we were, as everybody is now, we're all about load. Like you mean, but there's as big a fatigue physically and perhaps a little bit more mentally. So why did we reduce the number of referees? Because we obviously didn't have enough that were thought to be good enough. Because when professional referees started, they were about 24, weren't they?
Yeah.
When you started, now is what, 18?
Yeah.
20?
Mm-hmm.
So, and then they have to do VAR as well. So what's going on? Yeah. All this money we have in the Premier League, we've got millions and billions of pounds in the Premier League, and we're not expanded into, the coaching of referees. They keep telling you have, but they haven't. There's no young players been released by a football club trained to be a referee that I know of. There's no fast tracking an ex-player who might have finished.
Well, it was Baines, wasn't it? Stevie Baines.
That was years ago.
Yeah, Baines was last.
I always remember Baines, though. He used to get to stick both ends. And that was his problem, getting accepted. He didn't get accepted. He got slaughtered by the ex-players, and he got slaughtered by the referees. There's
a report come out, I presume you've read the report that the BBC did that came out this week that said that there was a high percentage of grassroots referees don't feel safe. They've been abused either physically or verbally.
I understand.
Why would you become a grassroots referee now?
I was. Because it was part of the system. That was what you had to do. You started off and you had to come through the grassroots level. I got abused. There was one time I didn't even collect me money because he was gonna assault us, and I didn't want to be assaulted, so I found a better way. I blew my whistle, ran straight at my car and got away. That's sad. But there's other referees who are getting assaulted. They're talking about body cams because the police can't prosecute. All of this stops the development of refereeing, because what happens is you might recruit. I think there's 28,000 referees in this country. You might recruit 5,000 in a year, but you'll lose 4,900 because they don't feel in an environment. It starts, and it starts off, not just grassroots, even junior football. You know, and what's sad in junior football is
parents,
the parents.
Yeah. We hope you're enjoying watching No Tippy Tappy Football, brought to you by William Hill. And don't forget, you need to subscribe to the Footy Accumulators YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. So around about 10 years ago, randomly, Sam, Mark, I did the Greater Manchester's refereeing course. It was just when I started working in football, and I have this kind of, which I think you might appreciate, Mark, this kind of base idea that if you are being paid to talk about football, you should at least try to understand the real laws of the game. So I did the refereeing course. You pay to do the course, Sam. So I can't remember what it was. It was 150 quid or something. It wasn't a lot.
It's a lot of money.
If you want
to be a ref, by
this is true, especially if you're young. And then I did it over weekends. I think it was Saturday and Sunday over a month or something like that. And then at the end of it, you have to do 6 games, and then you can be a referee. I did my 6 games. I never ever wanted to do it ever again. But I have a 5-year-old, Mark, a 5-year-old who is obviously he's getting into football as young, as young kids do.
Is he a City fan?
He is a City fan, Sam. But to be honest, Sam, he doesn't want to play football. At 5 years old, he wants to be a referee. No, so I got him a set of red and yellow cards off the internet for Christmas. He loves them. He's got a whistle. And whenever his friends are playing, he wants to be a referee.
Good.
But as a mum, I think, do I want my child to grow up in an environment where...
If he starts now, he's going to be a great ref.
Yeah.
I'm telling you now. Yeah. If you want to be a referee at that age, by the time he's 20... he'll be there.
I tell you what I used to do. It was just, you're watching the TV, like even tonight, I would watch the TV, foul.
That's what he
yellow
does.
card.
That's what he
yellow
does.
card. You know, and
he's not bothered about goals really. He's like, Mummy, the referee gave a yellow card. What did he give the card for?
Yeah. And that's good. That's good because then he understands it. But you had an interesting point. And it's also interesting. Players have to pass the laws of the game, and that everybody should pass the refereeing course, which is the laws of the game. And I think, it doesn't matter if you're a journalist, it doesn't matter if you're involved in football, a player, coach, everybody should pass the basic laws. Because even agree. I've had a discussion with one coach, and he said something at half time. He was completely wrong in law.
Yeah.
Completely wrong in law.
Yeah.
So he didn't understand the laws of the game, the basic law.
But then it's the issue that the laws are, like Sam said earlier, the laws are updated so much that do any of us know the laws of the game anymore?
It's just made it too complicated for a long time for the referees now. I mean, offside rule, that's starting now. This...
But the laws,
like if he's stood over there and he's not stood here, and then the ball comes in, if he touches it, but it doesn't touch, and it comes back. Particularly let's take the recent one, the Marcus Rashford one. You know what I mean? Now, there's rules of the game, but then there's common sense has to prevail. Whatever you say, he's interfering.
I'm so glad you think that, Sam.
He's so close. He's so close to it.
As a City fan, I'm not over it, Mark.
Honestly, everybody who thinks he's so close to it. Probably apart from any Man United fan, of course, they'd say, "Oh no." And then
even a large percentage of them have said it.
My problem's always been inconsistency.
Yeah.
No, subjectivity. I think if you go to that word, because look, offside never used to be subjective.
No.
You either off or you on. Years and years ago. Remember, far side of the pitch,
plain and simple.
And you would flag him off.
Plain and simple.
Now there's so much subjectivity in the decision of offside. Is he interfering? Has he touched the ball? And this is what causes all of the inconsistencies of the referees, because we don't know sometimes what is offside.
Because there's too much to think about.
Yeah.
Isn't there?
Is he touching the ball? Is he not? In this Rashford situation,
too much to think about for the referee.
There was too much subjectivity. I can understand why the goal was given. I don't agree with it.
No.
Because football want this offside. But I can understand, and it's not a mistake by the referee or the assistant because of what they did.
It's because the rules.
Because the rules were so subjective.
Subjective, yeah.
And I don't like this. This is probably why football is one of the most difficult sports, because we haven't got factual decisions. We've only got the ball over the line now, which is covered by technology.
Which sometimes doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, that is a great piece of equipment.
Brilliant.
Ball over the line job.
Brilliant.
I mean, that's nobody disputing that's been a great asset to the game, but
it would have saved me at Old Trafford against Tottenham when Mendes hit that long shot. It was my debut at Old Trafford. I'm on the halfway line having my cigar in my mouth last couple of minutes of the game, and then he hits this, and then people say to me, "How do you not see it? If you can stand on the halfway line
and see it."
Yeah, when he pulled in.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see. I'm really interested to see how it goes on in the position.
So we
what
keep
he's
saying
gonna
that.
do.
So Howard Webb is
Howard
the
Webb is
new
the new
head of the
PGMOL.
Yeah, he did a good job in the MLS, and I think the MLS is a different job than the Premier League, of course. For example, the PGMOL had the 3 or 4 staff. Now I think it's got 100 staff, so it's a huge organisation that Howard has to run, and he's got a lot of elements within that. He saw in his first weeks of his job how difficult it is when they're making very clear mistakes as VARs. And like I said before, referees can make mistakes and you can accept it, but you can't accept a VAR making such big mistakes like they did last weekend.
His real problem is this. His real problem is like all other referees across the country, these rule changes, who are they? From FIFA and UEFA and why do they sit down and say we're going to make this and this and that and that? I mean, and there's a man there who should be at the forefront of changing it back to a bit more stability in terms of there's too many things to think about subjectivity, as he said, and that's Arsene Wenger, because he's there in controlling factors and keep speeding the game up. This game's far too quick as it is at the minute. Maybe keeping the ball in play a bit better, maybe that would be of interest, and talk about time wasting and stuff like that. I mean, we're running players into the ground already. Players deserve to get run into the ground because they're greedy. We all are, because anybody and everybody will turn where they're working to go to another job for thousands of pounds more. So they call players greedy, but everybody's greedy. So all those people who call them greedy, they're greedy themselves, because if it got offered to them, they'd be gone like a shot.
100%.
You know what I mean? So they should really keep their mouth shut because they're jealous, right? But, players' injuries, players' welfare, mental fatigue, physical fatigue, they really don't know what's coming when they're finished. And that we've already got the dementia side of it, where it's proven that we're more likely to get dementia than any ordinary person by heading the ball. But if you look at the PFA list on how many hips, backs, knees are being replaced in the 50s, so there's a lot to come, and even more to come with the load they're getting now. And everybody watching this will go, "Well, I really feel sorry for him on 150." Well, but don't forget, most of them are not on that. Most of them who play down there are on 500 quid a week in League 2, maybe 1,000 quid a week in League 1, you know what I mean? And then they've got to find another job when they're finished to look after their family. So we're only talking about the elite here, the elite 5, 8, 7%, like you mean.
You've got to think, and this is what people don't understand, and this is where your 5-year-old and other referees don't understand when you're going into professionalism. You've still got to go to school. You've still got to get your exams. And I became an electrician. I went from electrician into
shocking
the office.
that,
Yeah.
Here
we go.
Oh no,
he was waiting for that to set him up.
Oh,
and I went into I went into management side. But what was interesting, the moment I went professionalism, that's when the stress came for the first 2-3 years, because I left my industry and I couldn't get back into my industry. So once I got to a point that became apparent that I couldn't go back, what could I do? And okay, the Premier League started to retrain you to go through university. I did my law degree. I did 3/4 of my law degree. So you could still retrain in other aspects, but that was an important step just for professional refereeing. But the most important, what's going to happen at the end of it? One day they can just say goodbye.
I know.
And if you say goodbye, what are you going to do next?
Yeah.
So I had to protect my family. And when Saudi Arabia came along and offered me a lot more money than I was on in the Premier League,
you go.
I'm leaving the best league in the world, but my family's more important.
Absolutely.
I'd love to talk to you both now about some of the just the general sort of topics that are going around in football at the minute. Get both your opinions. So he's already been mentioned a little bit earlier. Our friend Neil Warnock, he was a guest on the podcast.
Yes, Neil,
yeah.
Don't know if you know, Mark, we've got a cracking record here on this podcast. We had Duncan Ferguson on, and then he went into Forest Green.
Yeah.
We had Neil on a couple of weeks ago.
What are you trying to say then?
Are you thinking of a career in management? I'm joking. What do we make? What did you think of the news when you heard that Neil had gone back to Huddersfield?
Well, not only spent some time with him, I spent some time on a function for the LMA for some of our sponsors, like that follows cracking cracking night actually with in the Royal Gardens in Kensington in the Chinese restaurant upstairs, and 14 specific guests who support the LMA and obviously help us with our finance. And we had a great night. And of course, he was saying, "Now that is me now. I am finished now. I'm 74." So I'm like, but as he was here and as he was there, looked really well. Looked like really happy with it and that. But I've stopped saying that I'll never go back in. I've said it a couple of times and then ended up going back in again. But I've not had as many clubs as him, and obviously this one. And of course, it's very difficult to leave it. It's like I've said this many times. It's like withdrawal symptoms when you leave it, because you're right involved in it. And you make that many decisions. Then all of a sudden there is no decisions to be made apart from what you're going to have for your breakfast and are you going to have a game of golf or what holiday you're going to take. And that's such a big withdrawal system from your normal day-to-day working as a manager, like you mean, because it's constant flow and constant engagement and constant decisions to be made. So, but good luck to him. Anybody knows, that he can manage any team and get them to play better.
Think you'll save them?
Probably, yeah. I think probably his best success, and I don't know whether he would say this, I thought probably Neil's best success was definitely taking Cardiff up to the Premier League with what he had. Yeah. And how he did it. But of course, a little bit like myself, he gets lambasted by his style of football, like you mean, which is being, implemented by quite a few clubs now, again. So actually using the ball in the right areas at the right time, rather than tippy-tappying, which is the name of this podcast, which is tippy, yes, no tippy-tappy football, because,
Yeah.
I actually said named it that because I got sick of watching it. Yeah. But Neil's back in because he's knows the game inside out. He knows how to deal with players. He knows. I was listening to Simon Jordan on TalkSport yesterday, saying he was the best manager he ever had. I mean, not that we could take too much out of it because it's Simon Jordan, because he had a bit of a nightmare, really, didn't he, at Crystal Palace. But obviously, he expressed his opinion, and he had a lot of managers, and Neil was the best. You can't last as long as Neil has if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Mark, he's got good backroom staff as well. He's got good loyal
takes
people.
Them all with him all the time.
Good loyal people.
No, I'm not so sure about that personally, but it's everybody's preference. Yeah.
This is the point in the weekly podcast now, Mark, where I have to ask Sam about his current situation, which we do every week, because obviously he said that he's not saying he's not going back into football. There's always a job that he's linked to. Sure. So we asked you last week, but we'll have to ask you again about Leeds because they've still got their caretaker manager.
Well, there's no call from Leeds, and there's been, and obviously since Southampton let Nathan Jones go after such a bit, there's been no call from Southampton either. So I sit here looking forward to going to Dubai tomorrow and enjoying with my wife in the sun for a couple of weeks.
Will the phone be on in Dubai though?
We'll still be doing our podcast, so we'll,
Do you have a team? Do you support a team? I mean, you must have done growing up.
Yeah, Newcastle. Yeah,
Newcastle. Yes.
I remember a little story. And I was a young fourth official, and I'm talking grassroots level as a referee, and you were invited to be before the professional referee, and you could be a fourth official. And I was fourth official Newcastle West Ham, and I was like, brought me family, everybody to the game. I parked up, and I was like excited as anything. Graham Paul was the referee, and I went onto the pitch before the game, and he said, Mark, who do you support? And I'm thinking, I can't say I support Newcastle. I'm fourth official, And I said, no, I don't support anybody. He says, come on, Mark. He said, everybody supports a football club. You're a referee. You must love football. I said, yeah, I love football. He said, come on, who do you support? I'm not telling you I don't. He said, well, hold on. Which result do you look for in the paper on a Sunday? And smart as a carrot I went, Sunderland. He said, why Sunderland? To see if they got beat. He went, you're a Geordie.
And were you allowed to still fourth official?
Yeah. Well, actually, we got beaten. I think we got beaten as well.
How do you stay straight down the line then? Sorry, Sam. How do you not be unconsciously biased towards your team?
Because we're not allowed to referee them.
That's right.
And also what used to affect it as well. If Newcastle were at that period and they were doing quite well, so therefore near the end of the season, if they were challenging for Europe, the teams around, that would affect me as well.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember doing a game at QPR, Tottenham, and Harry Redknapp alluded to it because Newcastle had won to go above Tottenham into the European spot. And I'd sent off Tarek.
Yeah.
Tarek.
Yeah.
Not Tarek.
Carragher.
No, Tarek. It was the Israel guy.
Oh, yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And I sent him off, and Harry Redknapp alluded to it to say that you've given that decision because you're a Newcastle fan to get Newcastle up. And I thought, wow.
No, well.
You know,
If there was one law of the game that you wanted to both change, or you feel should be changed, which law would that be?
I've got two.
Oh, okay.
I know he talks about quickening the game up.
I wouldn't
But
want
one thing
I
that
don't want to
irritates
quicken
me-
the game up.
No, but one thing that irritates me is throw-ins, delaying throw-ins. And players used to deliberately do it. They used to walk up the touch. I used to laugh. They walk up the touch line. They know what you're going to do. Back. And the player's laughing because he's wasted more time, yeah? And I used to just let him go, and then I used to blow the opposite way because I didn't want to caution him. Because technically, I would have had to caution him, but by allowing him to move up the pitch, I didn't have to caution him, but I could give the throw in the wrong way. I think if you don't take the throw in quick enough, or you take it from the wrong position, it goes the other way. And the other one is a goal kick corner situation. Late in the game, he'll probably say it's absorbing time. I think it's time wasting. For me, when players are going over to the corner and they're strolling across, you should have not a time limit, but the referee, a bit like the 6-second law with the goalkeeper. You never apply it, but you play within the parameters. So players would go a little bit more quicker to the corner, and also goal kicks. I remember Ben Foster, for example. He was a nightmare at West Brom. You were sleeping half the time before he kicked the ball in for a goal kick. And you would warn him, and then late in the game, he would take a yellow card, which would absorb a bit more time. But he'd won because he'd got what he wanted to waste more time. So if you said, okay, the goal kick, I'm going to give a corner, the goalkeeper would definitely kick the ball in a bit quicker. So I'm not saying would use it, but it gives the power of the referee to stop the goalkeeper delaying time.
So what did you make then of in the World Cup when we were getting 9-10 minutes every game because they were adding on everything?
When I was working in the media, it was a nightmare. I was having to work extra. But in fact, it had, now me and Sam were talking about this before, it added another effect to it. Players were getting fatigued and there was more injuries probably. And, you know, it wouldn't be interesting to see the stats about goals, what that 10 minutes give.
Well, normally, most goals are scored in the last 10 minutes of a game, normally, than any other time in a game. I don't know whether that's still the case because I haven't seen the stats for a long time. Like, I mean, not normally. But when it's interesting you talk about this because when I go back to the fact of time wasted, and I agree with it, we all time. I mean, we found out, me and Fergie, that Benitez had done a massive piece on us time wasting it, you know, which they never did, you know. Like, yeah, come on then. Anyway, so we're playing Arsenal away, right, and we're 1-0 up, 1-1. He sent Campo off, and he shouldn't have done.
Thank God that wasn't me.
Yeah, you know what I mean. He sent Ivan Campo off. We lost 2-1 in the last minute to an offside goal. So Keith Hackett's on his way up. All right. So Keith's on his way up, knowing that he's going to have to say, you know, because he can't defend himself. Right. So he's gone to, somebody. I said, like, yeah, but I better get it. I said, but this is the one that's going to crucify you. Right. Yossi Escalante got booked for time wasting on a goal kick. All right. So I said, this is really what you're not going to actually be able to answer this. He goes, yeah. I said, that was the second quickest goal kick in the game. And he got booked for time wasting because the crowd was going, because it was the last 2 minutes of the game. And the crowd were booing and booing and booing.
Putting pressure.
So we timed from the picking the ball up to putting it on the 6-yard box. Yeah. Not just Yossi's goal kicks, Arsenal's goal kicks, and it was the second quickest goal kick in the game. And he got booked for time. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay. It can all change your opinion. Yeah. What people's happening in so it's.
Well, you're making me feel like I've got power as a fan here. So.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Well, of course you have. Every fan's got power. You know, when they're hanging over the side.
Yeah, but if the referee should be strong.
I mean, it doesn't particularly bother me when a fan angers over. He tells me how useless I am.
Right, Mark, as we're getting towards the end of the episode, I've got some questions that I would like you to answer. Quick, just off the top of your head, what's your opinions on a few different things?
Yeah.
So, first of all, favourite Newcastle player this year? Who's the standout for you?
Oh, Gamarez. By an absolute distance. Very quickly, the matches he's missed, you can see a big difference. Yeah. Newcastle miss him because every time the ball comes from the defence, because it's tippy tappy football, everything comes through him. But the most improved player is Joe Linton.
Oh, very good.
Would you like, or do you think we should mic referees up? We often hear this in comparison.
100,000,000%. Because we want, and the fans in the stadium want to hear what is actually going on. And I haven't got a problem in. It used to be a problem years ago. People would say, you'd hear the players, absolute garbage. You don't hear the players. You know, let the referees speak in a controlled way. I've seen this. This is why I've made the decision. I'm going to the VAR. This is what I've seen on the VAR. Finish.
Yeah.
But let the referee speak why you give it. For example, the West Ham one, quickly. If he says he's breaking his fall, even though we don't agree with it, at least we'll understand why he give the decision instead of speculating.
If not on the pitch, then could referees come out after and explain that? Should they?
Yes and no.
Right.
No, every week. But what I like in the Bundesliga is, for example, when you've got a decision, the referee stand with a coach. At the end of the game, they have a dialogue. And it seems to work at that point when a referee's probably clarifying some law or he's clarifying the decision to the coach. I watched one incident a couple of weeks ago where the coach accepted that the referee was right because they showed him different replays as they were talking.
I've got a problem with this because it depends on the referee, because there's so many people who'd want to catch him out.
100%.
So many would like. So many people would be in whoever's ear it is. Like, ask him this question, ask him that.
It would have
to be.
But that's what would happen. That's and of course, you never send a referee out that doesn't want to go out.
Yeah. It'd have to be very controlled.
If those who can,
But get the media training, start them.
Yeah,
they should be getting media training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Referees
should be getting media training, but only when they're comfortable should they actually be. Because straight after a game, I mean, listen, I took many a lesson. I didn't do media training, but I took many a lesson. How do I cope with the pressure of the Premier League? How do I cope with the press? How do I cope with that? Like you mean? So, and I talked to a lot of people about that. Like you mean? So, it was always a difficult one to cope with the questions that are answered and consistently answered, and always asked in a different way to try and catch you out.
Yeah. Which player did you regularly have a run-in with? If you can think of one, you'd know you were playing against him, you'd think,
Craig Bellamy. But I loved him I loved him a part of my career because when he played for Newcastle, I couldn't referee him. But I remember sending him off. You would have been the coach. You were playing Man City. And I was coming down the tunnel for the second half, and I said, this is how silly football got in the end. I was talking with the coaching staff, and I said, how would you put up with him in training every week? He just constantly moans. And he does. It's fact. Yeah. And he just constantly abuses you. And I coached him in the first half for descent. And then he went into the penalty area for bowling, and I cautioned him for second yellow for diving. When he watched the replay, he got caught. So it wasn't a yellow card, you know. And I remember the next time I seen him, he wasn't particularly impressed. But he was a difficult player to referee. He was in your face and in your ear all the time, and really difficult to deal with.
Which fan base was the least enjoyable to referee in front of? Yeah.
Palace.
Yeah. I was not expecting that.
Oh, they're great.
I'll tell you why. It's not the problem you've got when you have such a bad record. So before they played in the Premier League, I refereed them at Brighton. And they beat Brighton 4-1 in the playoff semi-final. They went to Wembley, win. So they get into the Premier League. And then they just had a spell where it doesn't matter how I refereed them, they never won. And there was one game in your head, and it happened at Wigan. When Wigan got into the Premier League, 13 matches it took. And I think they beat Blackburn on New Year's Eve to break the record. I remember the club secretary, Stewart, writing Clattenburg 13, Wigan 1. There's a joke, you know, but it wasn't against me. It was just statistics. And the same with Palace, and they were playing Aston Villa. Aston Villa were plumb bottom. And in your head, you think you still got to referee the game, but half you expect as a referee, not that you know the score, but you think that team could win. You did that.
You back yourself today. If you're on song, if your players play the best, they can more likely to win it. Yeah.
So subconsciously, as a fan, you think that they've got a good chance of winning. Crystal Palace, mid-table, they're playing Aston Villa, who were plumb bottom, and Henderson threw one in back of the net. They got beat 1-0. I'm thinking, coming away from the stadium, I'm thinking this is just my luck. They get beat again, and then they go to the cup final. I didn't play an advantage for the early part of the moment. I sent off Chris Smalling because he got a yellow card for that, and then a yellow card later on. They were drawn 1-1 when Chris Smalling got sent off. So they have a big chance in the cup final against Man United. But I remember going to get what was not funny, but when you're going up in Wembley to get your medal, the referees go first, don't they? Mm-hmm. And as I'm going up one side, I'm getting booed off the Palace fans, and as I'm coming back down, I'm getting booed off the Man U fans. I'm thinking I've had an absolute nightmare. Yeah.
Palace fans.
Yeah. Palace never win it. They've never won a Premier League game when I was a referee.
Oh. Wow. And obviously some fans used to pick that out then and know that.
We'd know that as fans. We'd know that. Yeah. On big games, we look to see who's the ref. City?
Be careful now because I'm sitting next to you.
I don't remember thinking anything. Yes, there's a couple of refs that as City fans we often go.
Just remember, I refereed the City 6-1 against United.
Yes, of course you did. Okay. So
just remember that one.
Now, there is something, though, I do want to bring up with you, because you did say something about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago, that I really didn't like. And it was around about when you were talking about female referees and their pathway into the game. And specifically, you talked about pregnancy and fitness levels. I really didn't like it at the time. And I just wondered, is your opinion changed, or could you clarify your opinion? Yeah,
it was difficult because when you asked a question and you brought in and, there was clarification made. Because everybody comes to a point, probably it was clumsy how I said it. And what it is I want women. And in Greece, I give a female referee a chance to referee in the top league. Never happened before. I did the same in Egypt. So I'm all for women referees. And what I did, I spoke to people within UEFA. And what they were saying was the same, not exactly the same thing, but what they're saying is female referees, especially at FIFA level, I think the age limit's 25 before they can enter the FIFA age. What I'm saying is that age limit needs to be brought forward to give the females a chance to have a refereeing career first so they can choose a family life if they want to have that. Because what ends up happening sometimes when they're in that most important part of their career and they want to have a family, it sets them back because the pregnancy, by the time they have the pregnancy, they recover from the pregnancy, they get their fitness levels again, back. Yeah. And then what happens is, and it's a bit like what happens in us, if I'm injured for 6 months, somebody else can take my position. It's just the way, because somebody's refereeing better, they take that person forward. So it was a bit clumsy how I said it, but what we need to do is support, and I'm hugely for women in football, and we've seen this now in the Premier League. We've got more assistants now. I think Rebecca Welsh, who's refereed in the Championship, doing very well, going to the Women's World Cup. I think she'll referee in the Premier League, without doubt. So we're all for promoting women referees. It's how we can support them better, and maybe to reduce the age limit of FIFA so they can start at maybe 2021 so they can realise their ambition, because our ambition is to referee finals. We should support the women to reach them as well. That's how I meant to say it.
Yeah, I get your point, and I do agree. The clarifications is important, and I think for women, I think the issue that I had as a woman that works in football, you never hear anybody talking about the effect that it has on men when they have a family, or you never hear them talking about the sort of the shared childcare or anything like that. And I suppose what we didn't hear was what can we do about it? How can we support women? How can we get more women into refereeing?
This is the most important thing. How do we recruit and bring more women forward? I think women have got more opportunities. I give more women opportunities in Greece. I give more women opportunities in Egypt, because it's like, for example, you see a referee like Rebecca Welsh refereeing in Championship. It brings more women into the game, which is a positive. We want to see more women in, but we've got to find a way to support them in whatever they decide. If they want to have a career, if they want to have families, they want to have support with injuries, everything. We need to support them in a better way. And one of the ways we can do it is by reducing the age limit from FIFA so they can enter FIFA earlier. So it means if they need that career, if they want to stop their career for whatever reason, they have the time to come back to reach their goals, because sometimes you don't reach them goals within that time period.
Thank you for answering. Appreciate it. And I think as well, just to say, you from a woman that works in football, for both of you, you're both so respected and so highly thought of in the game that it's just, I'm hoping that for men like you to, when you get the opportunity to say things, to advocate for women, and when you're asked about, women referees, for the first thing that comes into your mind to be, yes, we need more.
100%.
We need.
I did, like Sam just said in live interviews.
Yeah, I understand.
You know what you want to say, because you want to help them, but sometimes it can come across clumsy.
Yeah.
And I didn't get my answer across, but there's one thing I always want. Everybody's equal. Everybody deserves the same chance. And it's good that things are changing in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sam, as always. We really enjoyed
Mark,
that
how's
one.
it coming?
Thank you.
Good to see you.
We got through loads there, didn't we? We got loads of secrets there as well. Thank you so much for joining us on another episode of No Tippy Tappy Football, brought to you by William Hill. We will be back next week.